Hola, mujeres. Welcome back to another episode. Today, we are kicking our series on child-free wealth with a returning guest. Carla, welcome back. ¿Cómo estás?
And muy bien. Hello. Thank you for having me again, Lucy. I'm so honored.
Yeah, so like ya somos like amigas, comadres, and everything in between. So I have been coaching mujeres on wealth building journey, and I want to say 80% of the chicas that I coach, they actually have children, but there's a 20% that don't have kids. Some of them are thinking about having kids. Some of them are afraid to say out loud that they don't want to have children because it's such a big cultural expectation as a Latina. And so that is what gave me the idea of, let me bring some guests that have decided to not have kids while they become financially free. Now, I want to start by saying, like, what is your relationship status? Like, tienes novio, marido, fiance? Like, give me the chisme.
Okay, so for folks who can't see, I just put my ring to the camera. I've been with my partner for about 6 years. It's going to be 6 years in like 2 months. And we get engaged on New Year's Eve. We've known we wanted to spend our life together. We actually have combined finances, which is otra historia. People are like, why are you doing married stuff with your finances if you're not married? Like we own a house together. We're committed to each other. We just are finally getting around to signing the paper.
I love it. And congrats. This is so big. Now, I'm going to ask you because I want people to know, like, tell me about the fiance. Can you tell, like, a little bit, like, what does he do? Where is he from? And how did you guys meet?
Okay, so we met on Hinge. So we met on the dating app. So I feel like Hinge should sponsor our wedding. I mean, we're just going to go to the courthouse, but still. So we met on the dating app. He is from Baltimore, Maryland, and he works in revenue cycle management for behavioral health and substance abuse. So if folks need to get some treatment, there's the actual facility and then there's all the back stuff and that's what he does. So he has been doing that for a while, started his own company about 2 years ago in revenue cycle management. And one more thing about that is that I am Latina, I am Hondureña, and he is actually white. So his grandparents are from Ireland, but he's, culturally white, racially white. So definitely navigating an interracial relationship.
Yes, thank you so much for sharing that. And I didn't send Carla any questions in advance because I kind of wanted to put her on the spot to just share real things. And nobody knows these. So this is the first time I'm going to share these on the podcast. I've actually met my husband also through a dating app.
What?
And
Which
yeah,
one? I'm just kidding.
and let me just so I've always dated, and I recently had a conversation with someone who I met in person. I said, I've always dated. And then I got to the point where I was thinking, like, I don't think dating is for me. Like, there has to be, quote unquote, something wrong with me because the relationships that I have, they want to, I'm going to call it oppress me. Like, they weren't supportive of my big goals. And it was actually until I met my husband through an app that I was like, is this guy for real? Like, it sounds too good to be true. So we have that in common. Mi marido también es un güero. I call him hermoso. He doesn't like that, but we have that in common. So I love that you're sharing that. When you start dating your now fiance, were you having conversations with him about money? And I wish you guys can see her face right now because she has the biggest smile like that I've ever seen on her right now. For those of you that are watching us on YouTube.
Okay, clearly I am so in love because I am. I don't often get to like gush about the love of my life on a podcast or really like ever. Like I just love him so much. So I'm so happy that you are asking me all these questions about him. So yes, on our second date, I asked him if he wanted kids. Second date, because I was like, I'm not here wasting my time with someone, because we had such a great first date that by our second date, I was already invested. And I was like, before I get invested even more, I want to talk about this. But I just realized you asked me if we talked finances, not if we talked kids. So let me answer that question. Sorry. So when we were dating before we moved in together, we were talking about finances. And at the time, I've shared on this podcast and folks who are familiar with my story, they know that I doubled my salary. So when he and I started dating, I was in higher education. So I was making about 50K and he was making six figures already. And I remember we started having a conversation about finances. And at the time, my goal, because I had just started in that job, my goal was still to create my emergency fund. And I remember like one of the main conversations that we had, I remember telling him, I was like, listen, you make twice as much as I do, and I save twice as much as you do. So literally from every paycheck, I was saving twice as much as he was. And that was one of those kind of eye-opening conversations of like, oh, we have different relationships with money. And and so we talked money eventually, like we combined our finances. I think a few months after that we moved in together 4 weeks before lockdown. Oh my gosh. So we had to get real tight real soon. Obviously our relationship grew through the pandemic, and we decided to continue building our life together and combine our finances, buy a house together, like really commit to each other in that way. But one of the first conversations that we had was about saving and how much we were saving.
I love that. I love that. And what a powerful way to start a relationship. And we have different family backgrounds, but I remember growing up, talking about money was such a big taboo topic. And also, you don't go on a day one or two and talk about finances, which now, as a financial educator, this is something that I want us to do. Like, I want us to not just talk about what is your favorite food or your favorite color, but rather, hey, where are you financially? Like, are you financially healthy, or what is your relationship with money? And I think that for us now that have access to the knowledge, that is such a powerful conversation to have, because you said it so well. You don't want to be wasting your time. Now, were you the one that right away was like, no, no quiero hijos? And why did you decide not to have kids, right? Because I have kids and I'll share a little bit about that too, but why did you decide to, nope, motherhood is not going to be for me?
Okay, so I actually decided I never wanted to get pregnant before I decided that I didn't want to have kids. So for a while, I was open to the idea of adopting or potentially fostering. And I may in the future foster. I don't know, probably not. I mean like in the future, like in my 60s, I think foster parents are a social good. But in terms of like me raising a child, yes. So let me tell you first, the reason that I knew that I didn't want to get pregnant is about 10 years ago, I got really sick. I was having a lot of like gastrointestinal issues. I ended up having like an emergency appendectomy. It was so bad, and that didn't resolve the issues. So I remember one time one of the medications that they gave me made me so nauseous. And I was so weak from everything else that was going on that I couldn't move. And I remember I was on my couch, and my phone battery was like at 8%, and the charger was over there. And I was like, I am so nauseous that I don't want to move. And my phone battery might drain, and I won't be able to call for help. But I would rather like lay here and die than get up from how nauseous I am. And I know that that sounds really dramatic, but I was just so, so, so sick. My sister had experienced some acute morning sickness. Like that's what it's like. I just knew that I never wanted to feel that way again. I've also like heard just so many horror stories about pregnancy. And I also know about like the social determinants of health and how Black and brown maternal health in the United States is like just pregnancy sounds so horrible to me. Sorry. I'm like going into
No,
detail
no,
about my
this is
trauma.
totally right. This is your
Yeah.
story. And I want to share some numbers because I was like, oh, I'm curious to know. So for those of you that are listening to the podcast and you're like, first of all, you don't have to make a decision right now, right? We're just here to share a new perspective. Like Carla no quiere hijos, hijas. I have two girls. We're done having kids at home. Like when I met my husband, we both had this illusion of we're gonna have 5 kids. And my last daughter was such a awful pregnancy to me that I honestly thought I'm never gonna see the other side of these. Like I thought that I was done not only having kids, but also like mentally, it affected me so much. And so here in the United States, to raise a child from birth to 18 years old, it's about 297,674. Like that's a lot of money, right? And then here in Washington State, which is where we record the podcast, we pay on average 1,044 per child. So my kids go to, I don't want to say a daycare, but they go to like a before school program, and that sounds about right on how much we pay. So having kids is definitely a huge financial responsibility, a lot of mental responsibility, and I'm always say you don't have to have kids, right? Like I mentioned that my husband and I wanted to have 5 kids, but then we decided not to. And now my daughters are so active. And I'm saying this not because they're my daughters, but because I also babysat a bunch of nieces and nephews growing up. And my daughters are so smart, so much that they require like continued stimulation or else they get bored. And when they get bored, they get nutty. So I'm like, no, we're not going to get nutty, right? So, Carla, what does your family say about this, right? Because vamos a ser bien chismosas right now. Family always puts the pressure of y los hijos para cuándo, right? They don't ask you about your next career move or your investments or when are you going to retire early. It's always like, when are you going to have kids? You're about to get married. Are they going to ask you that question?
You know what? Maybe. I I'm pretty sure I no, for sure I have told each of my parents that I don't want kids. No kids, no thank you. Like that's it. And now that I'm engaged, maybe they will like start asking. I remember actually my older sister. So she was the only one in our family who has kids. And she was kind of joking, but this was a few years ago. She comes up to me and says, "Carla, I am ready for my kids to have cousins." And I was like, "Girl, go someplace else. Go pick, you have two other sisters, your husband has a brother and a sister. Like the kids are not getting cousins from me." So that was kind of like a joke. And my parents haven't asked me for a while, like when I'm going to get married. And maybe when I get married, they might ask that. But I don't want children. And I think that they know. And I even like tell my parents, like, "Oh, your grandbabies are my pets." Like, so I think they've gotten the hint, but I'm at the point in my life, like I have done so many things that are outside of what is expected that I'm at the point in my life where they know that they can't pressure me into doing anything that I don't want to do. I mean, I left the religion of my upbringing. I moved in with my boyfriend before we got married. Like those things are major taboo things and I've already broken them and done them. And I think that they know that they can't tell me what to do.
Yes, and now I'm the one smiling because I'm like, me too. Like I was raised in a Catholic household, and my religion now is completely different. And I I do believe in God, but I also believe in the universe, and I believe in all of these things that Catholics don't believe in. And I'm like, that's okay, right? But also, I respect people that have the background because that's for them. Just how having kids is for some people, and not having kids is not for everyone. And I also recommend not everyone needs to have kids because there's some mujeres out there that are like, yeah, I'm going to keep having kids, but then they're not being a good parent. And so it's also a decision of it's financial, it's emotional, right? It has to do with your body. But also I will say there's some people that I wonder why they're having kids because it's tough out there.
Yes, Michelle Obama said I watched an interview from her and I think she said like I never expected my kids to fill a hole in my heart or feel some emptiness inside of me. And I think that a lot of people might feel that emptiness and they try to fill it with a child. They try to fill it with parenthood. And I'm not saying that I'm like perfect and like I don't have emptiness. Like there's, like I'm obviously healing my inner child and doing a lot of work, but I know that I don't, first of all, yeah, the money is a big reason. The lifestyle is a big reason. And then also just like the freedom. And I know that I don't want to have that responsibility over another person. Like that's just, I know that that's not for me.
Yes. And I love my daughters there. And by the way, my daughter has a similar, we have so many things in common. Like my daughter has, her name is Carla too, but she goes by Carla
Cute. I
Grace.
didn't know.
Um, and I'm like, the more I learn about you, this is why you keep coming back because we have so many things in common. But that is one thing that I'm also going on my healing journey. I feel like I've done so much work. I'm a better person. I'm a better mom. I'm a better daughter. But also trying to teach them that I'm not always available for them when they need me. It has come with a little bit of guilt of, for example, if I'm in the office, they don't come into the office. They will like step outside and be like, hey, can I talk to you? And there's so many things that I'm teaching them so they can take care of them. But also, I have to be emotionally available for them because there are days when they come home and for them it's like the end of the world. Like, my friend told me that I was ugly, and like just a lot of emotional things that I have to be available to help them with. Sometimes that also makes me feel like, wow, imagine if I had 5 kids. Like that will be so much work. And so my husband and I decided that we were done. And Tenemos dos niñas, so every time we go to like family gatherings or even his coworkers are always asking like, "Hey, what about the boy?" And so we finally say like, "No, we're done. Like physically, we can no longer have more kids because we decided that way." And I know for my family, that was a hard thing to swallow because they were really expecting more. And I'm like, no, I'm happy to be a tia. I don't have any pets. That's another thing. I actually decided to be a pet-free household. So I don't have any pets. I don't want any pets. I think that my decision was real humans or pets, and I went for humans. So I have this big boundary of I will never have a pet in my house. Like if my daughters want to have a dog or a cat, they have to wait until they leave my house to have that. And I'm very strong about that. And sometimes they're like, Mommy, please, I'll take care of it. But I'm like, no. So I'm bringing this because you said that you have babies, right? You have four-legged babies. Is it four-legged babies?
Yes, four-legged babies.
So, what do you do with them when you go? Because I see you go to conferences, you go to speaking events, you travel. Like, what happens to those babies? Where do they go?
Yes. So we actually recently lost one of our babies. Actually, we
I'm
recently
sorry.
lost two of our babies. It's so sad. So my growing up, and I hear you with the not having pets because I adopted a dog like 3 weeks ago, and I'm just like, oh my God, he's so much work. But for a while we had two cats, and we had my childhood dog who was, in the last podcast episode, he made an appearance. My childhood dog, he was technically my sister's dog, so we kind of split custody. And, he passed away in December. So we've had the two cats. Now we got another dog, and then our cat passed away. It's all been very, very sad, but also full of life. To answer your question, the cats are fairly independent. So, like we pay my little sister to come watch them, so every other day she comes in, makes sure they're fine, cleans the litter box, refills the water, refills the food, like hangs out with them for a little while. And so that's for the cats. And for our dog, like because we quote unquote split custody, she would keep him when I would travel. And now that we got a new dog and he's me and my fiance's, not me and my sister's dog, our plan is still to pay my little sister to watch the dog. But also sometimes we're open to putting him in a kennel. So that's definitely something that we talked about. But again, the cats are independent. So as long as we can find a family member or a friend to come in and check on them, like every other day, and that really has made it possible. It's also that I tend to, for the conferences, I travel by myself and my fiance stays home with the pets.
That's awesome. As you were talking, I had another question that came to mind, and I was like, "Oh, this one is going to be so spicy." Okay, are you ready?
Yes.
Has your decision to be child-free wealth give your family permission to say, "Well, she doesn't have X, Y, or Z expenses, so we're gonna ask her for money."
That is so interesting. I have three sisters. My sister asked me for help, and she was like, "Listen, this is a loan," and it was an amount that I could do, and it was like a temporary thing. It was like I'm moving, and like I need the first month deposit, and moving is expensive, and that kind of thing. But it came from like a place of love and not a place of entitlement. And I do have like a loved one emergency fund, and that has been like that was something that was okay. I also had an experience where another family member asked me. They basically said, "Hey, I signed up for a 0% credit card, and now the 0% is over. Can you loan me $4,000?" I almost died. Like I was like, "What? What makes you think that the frivolity that you just said?" Anyway, that's like a whole other conversation. So there's been, I would say, those two experiences. One of them I said yes because it was kind of within the parameters that I had set for my loved one emergency fund. And one of them I was like, this is going to set a bad precedent. That's not something that we're okay with. That's not, it was two different circumstances. But I will say, nobody has ever said it to my face, like Carla has, like, you don't have kids, so give me your money. I
Yeah.
don't think nobody feels that way.
And I love that you have the peace of mind for loved ones because I think that's important to have. The reason why I ask you this is because sometimes, as the first one in my family to become an investor, and also, we're making money in a way that I didn't make this kind of money 5 years ago. And so when I share with them, I just got hired for a brand deal and this is the amount they're paying me or things like that, they, in their mind, they're like, wow, she has X amount of dollars like available to spend, right? And I also have had family members that come and ask me for big chunk amounts, and I'm like, no. And I felt guilty for saying no, but I also understood that it's not my job to give them permission to heal their money story, right? Like I can help and provide the resources. And I did. And I said, hey, I cannot give you this money, but here's what I can do. And they declined my offer. And I said, well, at least I can go to bed and sleep comfortably because I provided resources and I even offered to pay for that resource so they could benefit. And they say no. But I do feel sometimes that because I'm the one that is halfway there, if no more, and have the money and have these resources, that they kind of do feel some type of entitlement of like, well, let's just ask her, right? And so even now when we're going to a family vacation, we plan it in advance. And I would say like, hey, this is the place where we're staying. This is how much the place costs. You know, we're taking care of the lodging, but you're taking care of your food or things like that. And at the beginning, I remember like getting this like, well, like, is she really not paying for everything? But I have to set those boundaries because I don't want to be a financial enabler because that kills me so much. So I'm so glad that you have that.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And let me tell you, it has been a learning experience because so for example, when my mom bought her house, her first house, I was maybe in grad school or in college. I didn't have like a lot of money, but I did have good credit. So I opened up a credit card. It was like a Home Depot credit card for her to like have the install and she paid it off. And I told someone and they were like, wow, that was like a big gamble, because I've seen of like family estrangement happen because of things like that. But I know that my mom would have my back and like I know that she would never do anything to like harm me or my credit, and that turned out well. And then when I eventually bought my house, I was like, oh look, I need stuff at Home Depot, so it's a good thing I have the credit card. But recently she asked me, this is like super spicy. Oh my gosh.
All right,
Sorry,
bring it
Mama.
on. I'm ready.
She asked me to co-sign on a house for her. I was like, what, mom? And it's so interesting because, my fiance and I, one of our goals is to buy a single family home. Like that is like, I dream of a single family home with a pool. And we were just talking about that. And literally that afternoon or that night, my mom asked me, and I was like, Mom, listen, I can't co-sign on a house for you when I'm going to try to buy a house for myself. And I sometimes wonder, like, oh my God, imagine if we hadn't had that conversation, would I still have had the courage to tell her, no, that's an outrageous request?
Now tell me
Like,
about your mom.
absolutely
Like, what was
not.
the reaction like? Because I also think that our parents have set this huge cultural expectation of, I'm doing quotation marks, I sacrificed so much for you, so now is your turn to pay me back, and I'm still doing quotation marks. What was your mom's reaction like?
I think she understood, like I definitely think she understood. And to her credit, I'm actually like so incredibly proud of my mom because she figured it out. She figured out another way. And she is actually going to sign on her house on her second house, which is amazing. She's an immigrant to the United States, doesn't have a college degree. She pursued other ways to like build her own financial security. And she's going to close on a second house
I love
in like 2 weeks.
Yeah,
So I'm so
mom.
happy for her. Yay! So like I'm giving my mom my flowers, but I think it was a moment of kind of uncertainty that she asked for this. And I was like, I set that limit with her and we kind of brainstormed different things and and she figured it out because my mom is resourceful. I am resourceful because I learned that from her. And so her reaction is that she understood and she figured it out. And she just had to wait like 4 months to close on her house rather than doing it 4 months earlier.
I love that. I love that. And it's so important to have those financial boundaries and also feel like you don't always have to solve your parents' problems with money because sometimes you can solve them with here's a phone number or here's the link to local organization that will help you buy the house, that will help you fix your credit, that will help you get a discount on the electricity bill and things like that. So I just love this conversation so much. But I want to come back to you and your child-free wealth conversation. You're about to get married, and you just said you're going to go to the courthouse. Why did you decide just to go to the courthouse?
Girl, we don't want to pay for a wedding. So, like, here's the thing. On my vision board, there is single family homes with pools. That's what's on my vision board. I don't have like the Taj Mahal on my vision board or, like month-long international vacation. Like right now, my focus is single family home with a pool. And I live in South Florida. Like we're talking significant chunk of money. And that's been me and my partner's goal for the last few years. It's actually like the reason not wanting to like have a big wedding, it's we don't want to plan a wedding and we also don't want to pay for a wedding. And that's really been the only thing that's holding us back from like getting married. But this year we're like, okay, we should just go to the courthouse and get married because even after I got engaged, I'm like looking at my ring. I'm like, wow, I still don't want to plan a wedding or pay for a wedding. So it's 100% I would say it's like 90% a financial decision, like 8% logistics, and then 2% like I I just like I don't want to deal with all that drama, like it's yeah, it's like
Yeah.
90% financial, 10% logistics. Like somebody gifted me a wedding, like if Hinge wants to gift me a wedding, sure.
We're gonna tag them below. And I think at some point when I was talking to my husband about like my dream brand collaborations, I said, "Oh my God, I'm totally gonna reach out to Match because that's how we met and ask them to sponsor my podcast because hello, like here we are now, 10 years later. We're still madly in love. Our relationship has, I mean, every year, I honestly feel like this man is just like the most amazing person. And he says yes to everything. Like, babe, I'm going to go do this. Yes. Babe, I don't want to do this. Yes. Like, he's always like very supportive. And I feel very blessed for having him. So, Carla, to end this podcast, what would you say to the listener who is struggling with that decision of I don't want to have kids? And that's part one. And part two, how can they start having conversations with their partner right now about finances?
So for the first one, I want to share what my therapist told me. So before I met my fiance, my now fiance, I was dating, and I remember I started seeing someone. We went on like a few dates and he really wanted kids. And I was like, whoa, that's scary. Like, don't look at me like I'm a baby machine, like get away from me. And then I was dating someone else and he didn't want kids. And I was like, whoa, that's scary. What if I want kids? And I remember I was telling this to my therapist and she says, well, what if you don't have to decide forever? You just have to decide for now. And I'm like, oh, I know I don't want any kids in like 3 to 5 years. And she goes, okay. And then in 35 years, you can decide again. So that's the advice that I would give to someone. It's like, you may not have to decide forever. You can just decide for now, or, maybe like make a checklist and like maybe in 2 years, I will decide again. And, like obviously, like if that's a route you're going to, definitely just like take care of your health as much as possible, especially, like I'm 33. If you have the means to freeze your eggs and you might want to do that, sure. To me, that sounds horrible. And it was one of the many reasons I don't want kids. But just consider your options and just know that you don't have to decide right away. And there's many ways to be a parent. So that's the first thing. You don't have to decide right away. The second part of your question is how can you start talking to someone that you're seeing, I guess, about finances? I think there has to be a level of trust. It's like, hey, so, like what's your approach to retirement? Like, do you ever think about retirement? Do you ever think about the future? Kind of just asking that question and seeing like what are your financial goals? Or like what are some of your life goals? And kind of just bringing it, kind of keeping it general and kind of getting starting general and then getting a little bit more specific. I think that would be really important. I know that my partner and I were talking about finances before we decided to move in together. I mean, we talked about finances, we talked about chores, we talked about holidays. So it's really important to have open communication. And here's the thing, if you can't respectfully, lovingly, and with trust talk about finances, then it's probably not a relationship that is going to work out anyway.
I love it. Carla Santamaria, thank you so much for kicking off the series of Child Free Wealth. It has been an honor having you back. I learned so much about you. We have so many more things in common. So thank you again for coming to the show.
Thank you for having me. Bye, everyone.